It's the John Phillips Show, and it's the Fix California Hour. Johnny's on vacation. He'll be back on Monday. It's Randy Wang here, and the phone number to join us is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com, and you can search for the John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcast. I literally hit publish on the 12 o'clock hour right now as we discussed Matt Mahan announcing a run for California governor. Speaking of podcast, our next guest hosts the California Underground podcast, which is based out of San Diego but covers the California state. You can get it on YouTube by going to youtube.com/@California Underground. Go to californiaunderground.live or on social media at California Underground. Phil Mauriello, welcome to the Fix California Hour.
What's going on, Randy? Good to hear from you.
So, Phil, I always like to talk to you when I see all the insanity that is going on right now in San Diego, although it sure seems to be that the locals have had enough and there's been quite some pushback. Let's talk about first the fact that this idea from Councilman Sean Elo Rivera to tax vacation homes and short-term rentals died in committee after immense opposition from the locals.
Yeah, some good news finally here in San Diego. It looks like they're trying to tax and fee us to death down here because of their financial mismanagement between Todd Gloria and the city council. There was an immense pushback. People did not want this. There was a lot of controversy around where this money would go and would it even have the intended effect of what he was proposing. Sean Elo Rivera was talking out both sides of his mouth, which I found fascinating, that he was saying, well, we're going to tax all these vacation rentals. Originally, it was $5,000 per room. Then he revised it to kind of walk it back and go, well, it's going to be $8,000 per resident or per unit per property. And we'll do a $4,000 surcharge if you're a corporate owner. But they walked that back. But he's saying it was to raise revenue to fix the $300 million budget deficit that we have here in San Diego. But also somehow it was to increase housing supply because it was to punish short-term vacation rental owners. So I don't know how that works, where if you're punishing them to sell and they're no longer short-term vacation rentals, how are you collecting revenue if they're now gone? So I'm happy to see it died. I'm glad to see that San Diegans pushed back on it and it died in committee.
Well, and when Sean Elo Rivera was making this his big campaign, that this was the thing he was going to go after, he kept saying over and over again, it's all the outsiders coming in and buying up homes in San Diego. When you look at who owns the short-term rental stock, it's San Diegans mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always blame the big bag corporations. It's always, these big conglomerates, but they're a small percentage of it. And yeah, there are out-of-state people who own in San Diego, but it's also people who own property and see it as a way to increase maybe income, passive income by renting out their properties that they have. They saw an opportunity to make money off of their property. And I don't see anything wrong with that. That's the free market. So I'm a big free market guy. If that's what you want to do is rent it out. If you have a home in Ocean Beach or Pacific Beach, all these nice areas here in San Diego, close to the ocean, rent it out and make some money. I think it's good for the economy here, but punishing these people who are doing this, that's not the way to do it. It's just going to drive them out and kill tourism.
It definitely seems like this is the beginning of the tide turning for what has been a year of just constant headlines of fee increases and price hikes, and the city council and Mayor Todd Gloria doing everything they can to nickel and dime the locals, including jacking up the fees for parking in the gas lamp up to $10 an hour for special events, which could be any Padres game, jacking up trash fees, even though they haven't even delivered the new trash cans yet, jacking up water fees with the water district. But the thing that definitely sent it over the edge was charging for parking at Balboa Park, a park that has been free to visit for over 150 years.
Yeah, that is, it's crazy what gets people out and about, like out active and into their communities, and parking fees is one of them. I want to just revisit really quick about Sean Elo Rivera and his short-term vacation rental. Something he said that I found really ironic is that, he was so humiliated by his loss on the short-term vacation rental. he said a quote that, the only reason I believe there's so many protesters and people down here is because I believe they were all paid protesters to be down here. This isn't completely organic. So I guess for the left, when it's paid protesters, they can use that excuse when they want, but not the right. I found that kind of ironic. But yeah, Balboa Parking is a beautiful park down here in San Diego. It is definitely our crown jewel. There's so many museums. The zoo is down here. I mean, millions of people come to Balboa Park every year. Families take their kids there as a cheap, affordable option, get outside, enjoy the beautiful San Diego weather. I mean, I'm sitting outside right now. It's January 29th, and it's 77 degrees and sunny down here in San Diego. Why would you not want to go out to Balboa Park? But it's created this huge ripple effect, and people are completely up in arms. They're vandalizing the parking fee machines that take your parking fees. They're putting Recall Todd Gloria signs on them. They're shoving glue and paint. It's just the people are fighting back. I kind of feels like in a weird way this parking fee is like the Stamp Act or like the tea tax. It just feels like people were fed up. This was one too many. It was the straw that broke the camel's back down here.
Well, and every time that Todd Gloria is asked about it, he says, no, well, we need this. So there's a dedicated funding source for the park. Like, no, that's what everyone's taxes were already for. You're stealing money that's supposed to go for the park and spending on other things and then charging people to go to a park that has been free for people's entire lives.
Yeah, you can counter Todd Gloria and say, okay, so how have we been funding the park for 150 years? Where's that money been? Now all of a sudden we need additional money to keep the park going. It sounds like you've been spending too much money and you don't have money allocated for the park, and that's the excuse you're going to use. And the truth is that, yeah, San Diego spends way too much. They have a huge budget deficit. Last year was $300 million. They're projecting around $90 to $100 million this year, which is still huge for a city that saw tax revenues go up, which is also astronomical to me of how much money and tax revenues have gone up down here in San Diego. I think the last number I saw was $1.2 billion in tax revenue San Diego took in. So it's not a revenue problem. It's absolutely a spending problem where they're spending on all sorts of different things, and it's caught up to them. And they expected measures like Measure E last year to pass, which was a half-cent sales tax increase in the city. They were expecting $400 million to come through that. That didn't come through. The people voted that down. So then they were caught with a $300 million budget deficit. They tried to say and sell Measure E as something it's going to provide for firemen, policemen, all this stuff. It's the stuff we need, all the stuff that plays on your heartstrings. But in reality, behind the scenes, they saw a budget deficit coming in. They need to fill it somehow. So why not raise taxes? That's the only solution Democrats in California ever have.
Well, and when that tax failed and the county tax also failed at the same time, they decided to do the newest trick that is going on in California. This has happened a lot in Los Angeles. It's happened in a whole bunch of other counties. But because of recent court rulings, now instead of the government putting a tax on the ballot where, thanks to Prop 13, you need a 2/3 majority to pass, you can have a union put it on the ballot as a citizens initiative, and it only needs 51% to pass. And that is what is going on, where the city and the county are once again in 2026 trying to bring back those tax increases on top of every single other increase they've had this year.
Yeah, Democrats couldn't do it on their own in the government. So what did they do? They turned to their buddies in the unions, and the unions were more than happy to comply and go out there and try and get signatures and raise money to get these citizens initiatives on the ballot so that it's a simple majority and it's not the 2/3. And, you kind of take a breath of relief when something like Measure E fails last year and go, okay, phew, we defeated that last year. Then all of a sudden, it's going to be temporary because they're going to come back one way or another. And the unions are behind it. SEIU is a big one. One for California firefighters is behind it. It's a 1 cent sales tax increase. But I don't, Granny, I'm not sure if people will buy it. I think between the Balboa parking and the short-term rentals and the trash fees and everything that makes it so unaffordable to live here in San Diego in this beautiful city, I don't know if people will fall for more taxes. In fact, one reason that Joe LaCava, who's the president of the San Diego City Council, voted no on the short-term rental tax is because he saw a poll that said 51% of San Diegans And maybe that doesn't seem like a lot, but 51% of San Diegans actually want to see the city cut services to balance the budget. So a simple majority of people say, look, you guys need to fix this, not us. And then same thing with Balboa parking. 80% of people who polled said they want them to abolish it. So I think there's a lot of anti-tax and fee fervor. So the unions are going to try. They're going to pour a ton of money into it, millions of dollars. They'll do the whole puppy dog police and firefighter thing. That's what I always call it. It's such a great, perfect proposal. It goes to all the great things you love. They're going to try and get it on there and get it passed. But I don't know. I think San Diegans are kind of fed up with trying to bail out all these politicians here in the city council who have just mismanaged our money.
We're speaking with Phil Mauriello, the host of the California Underground podcast. You can get it on YouTube, youtube.com/@CaliforniaUnderground. Now, it certainly seems like the San Diego City Council is in a mode of retreat. It's not just the tourists and the locals that are calling to attention what's going on at Balboa Park. It's also all of the museums in the park that say they've seen a massive drop in attendance. Even when the museums trade off free Tuesdays where admission is free, nobody's going because it's not free anymore because of the paid parking. And so you had 3 of the members of the city council, including Sean Elo Rivera, who voted for this fee increase for charging for parking just a few months ago, now trying to turn corner and be like, oh, maybe there's something we can do here. Maybe we can make it free for locals, or maybe we can make it free on Sundays. They are scared in a way that most city councils are never scared, and it is really interesting to watch.
Sean Elo Rivera's evolution, let's use the term, that's what politicians love to say, is evolution on this issue is fascinating to show what a spineless politician he is. He was the one who was behind this. He voted for parking fees. And then as soon as it dropped and it went into effect and he saw the pushback and people, vandalizing all these parking meters, he was the first one to rush out and release a press statement. Oh, I rushed to the mayor's office and pleaded with him to suspend it. I'm fighting for you, the people, but you voted for it. And now you're also trying to push different, maybe we'll do free on Sunday. Maybe it won't be for city residents. It'll just be for non-residents. So his political evolution on this has been really fascinating to watch. But, yeah, the whole city council kind of retreating on this is so great to see because it just means that San Diegans are really putting the pedal to the metal. And it's a shame for the museums because we have great museums down here. I think there's like 6 museums down here just in Balboa Park. They're free once every Tuesday of the month. And I saw pictures of it. There was no one there. And these are the days that these museums expect that people are going to come in, maybe go to the gift shop, maybe there's a snack bar or something like that. They expect and count on those people to go to Balboa. And I was reading an article about a mother who loves to take her daughter to the Fleet Science Center because there's a ball pit, there's a lot of interesting things for the kids to do, learn about science. They're going to have a whole birthday party for about 20 to 25 kids. And she goes, I canceled because I'm not going to force all these parents to pay for parking or look for parking or worry about parking. And think about how many birthdays have been canceled, events, maybe formals. It's so much trickle-down effect. It's harming these great museums here in Balboa Park that it's just this short foresight that these politicians have when they implement these kind of taxes.
We're speaking with Phil Mauriello. He is the host of the California Underground podcast. Now, the big news in California politics today is that 4 months before the June primary, we may have our last entry in the gubernatorial race. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan announced that he will be running for governor, and he says he needed to do this because he saw all the other candidates and wasn't impressed by any of them. What do you make of Matt Mahan running into this race?
I mean, I agree with his assessment that if you look at the Democrat candidates, I'm not impressed with anybody. You've got Katie Porter, who has been video recorded abusing her employees and has a, hair trigger temper. You have Eric Swalwell, who I think doesn't even technically live in California. I think they're filing that in court to figure that out. You have Xavier Becerra, who is at the middle of a campaign funds investigation with Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff. I mean, I could just keep going down. Tom Steyer, who is a self-entitled, greenie billionaire who somehow hates PAC money, but also is a billionaire who donates to PACs. I mean, just keep going down the list more and more and more, and I'm not impressed with him either. I've kept an eye on him. I think he's seen the centrist lane, in the sense of he sees that moderate, centrist lane that no one's really occupying. He's been a vocal critic of Newsom, which I like. I like that he called him out on things like Prop 36. The fact that he was an ardent supporter of Prop 36 and said he supported it and he voted for it is great. He thinks, we should have law and order. He's been a little bit tougher on homelessness. He wants to provide shelter, but also you can't just leave them on the streets and let them do whatever they want. Is he the most palpable Democrat out of the entire bunch? Probably, I would say, if you're looking for someone who's centrist and not a Katie Porter or an Eric Swalwell or a Xavier Becerra. But he is also a Bay Area Democrat, so do with that what you will and fill in the blanks about what you think he's going to do when he becomes governor.
Last question before you go. The latest episode of your podcast, you had Assemblyman David Tongipa on to talk about his fight and taking Prop 50 to the Supreme Court. Give us a little preview. What did y'all talk about?
Yeah, we had him on. It just went live on YouTube this morning, so you can go watch it there. David was great. He was talking about the fight for Prop 50. The argument is basically that the guy who drew the maps, Paul Mitchell, who is the husband of Jody Hicks, she is the CEO of Planned Parenthood Political Action Committee. He was out on social media boasting that he drew these districts specifically to increase Latino representation, which racially gerrymandered districts are facially unconstitutional, and that's the Republican Party's argument. They filed an emergency application with the Supreme Court to hear their case. I think that order should be coming down any minute now, today. That's what they're looking at. I think they had 24 hours to respond to it. But we go into all of it. We talk about the whole argument and how we feel about it. We also talk about fraud, waste, and abuse. He was a great guest, so go check it out.
You can check it out by going to the California Underground podcast. Go to their website, californiaunderground.live. You can follow Phil on social media at California Underground or subscribe to their YouTube channel, which I am, by going to youtube.com/@CaliforniaUnderground. Phil Mauriello, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks so much for coming on with us. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Hey, let's go to Bob in L.A. Bob, hello.
I was wanted to tell you about an exceptional city that I saw on the internet about the news show, and it was exceptional because it was very clean, and it was El Paso, right across the border from New Mexico.
You were out in West Texas in the town of El Paso, huh?
No, this was a news show on the internet, and they photographed all around the town showing how clean it was, and it surely was.
It can happen. And El Paso is one of the bigger cities in Texas. Thanks so much for the call. I spent a lot of time in Dallas, which is one of the biggest cities in Texas. I've spent time in Houston. And even though these are big metropolitan cities, I mean, the Dallas metro area, including Fort Worth and the neighboring cities and towns, is like 10 million people. But you see the occasional homeless person, but it is rare. And for the most part, the streets are very clean and the parks are maintained. And they do all of that without an income tax. Now, property taxes are a little higher there. That being said, you definitely get a much cleaner. The roads are a lot. For as bad as the weather is in Texas, the roads are in pretty darn good condition, even with all the hail. Do you know how California has trouble getting people insured because of wildfire? There's an insurance crisis brewing in Dallas and in Texas, and I don't know what you do about this, but insurers don't want to cover you for hail when you have these softball-sized ice blocks falling through the sky and destroying your car. Interesting thing to think about. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's Randy Wang here. Johnny's back up on Monday. That was me. It was me not hitting pause on the YouTube music and then fading up my fader. My bad. Just hosting a show and running the board at the same time. You know what's really, really, really exciting? The fact that we are going back to Gladstone's in Long Beach a week from tomorrow. This is going to be so much fun. And what we're so excited about this is much as we love to get down to Orange County, Long Beach is central to LA County and Orange County. You know what? You can get there from, it's a Friday. Traffic is a lot lighter on Friday. You can get there from San Bernardino or Riverside, or come down from the Bay Area. Spend the weekend down here. It's much warmer. It's going to be like 87 on Sunday in the Valley. Join us for a live broadcast at Gladstone's in Long Beach, Friday, February 6th from noon to 3. We're heading to Gladstone's in Long Beach for our next live broadcast, and you're invited. Come enjoy the great food. Oh, those poke nachos. Oh, makes me happy just thinking about it. I get to try it. I get to have it. Good vibes, great drinks, although I abstain from noon to 3, and a fun afternoon by the water. John Sengmeister is going to be taking care of you. We'll have special guests like Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, and she'll tell you more about your taxpayer rights and protecting Prop 13. We were just talking about with Phil Mauriello of California Underground. Here's what's going on in San Diego, and this is why this is so relevant. In 2024, the city and county of San Diego tried to pass sales tax increases because their budgets were bloated. And they both failed because Prop 13 says if the government puts a measure on the ballot to raise your taxes, it needs a 2/3 majority. So they got rejected. And, of course, now that's why they're nickel and diming everybody. But at the same time, what is the city and the county of San Diego doing? They're getting the unions to put their own initiative on the ballot known as a citizens initiative. And for some reason, the courts have said a citizens initiative means that you only need 51% to raise taxes. Does that make any sense? It really doesn't. That's why Susan needs your signatures, because we need to not only protect Prop 13, but strengthen it. So no matter who puts a tax increase on the ballot, it needs a 2/3 majority. You can help out. Go to saveprop13.com. If you've already filled out that petition and sent it in, great. Can you get 10 people by February 17th to do the same? We need as many valid signatures as possible. Come hang out with us. Bring them to the event at Gladstone's in Long Beach, but be part of the broadcast. We'd love to see you. We have such a great time. We take lots of pictures. We'll have some great food. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon. The John Phillips Show, live at Gladstone's in Long Beach, Friday, February 6th from noon to 3. Now, how am I going to transition from that to doing a giveaway? What's the easiest way I can do that? Oh, I know. I'll play Canned John.
What do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Why, thank you so much, Johnny. 790 KABC welcomes Luke Bryan, the Word on the Street tour at the Long Beach Amphitheater, August 15th. Tickets are on sale next Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing. So while we have been here speaking and talking about what's going on in the news in California, Gavin Newsom has been at a Bloomberg Newsmakers event, talking to a panel, taking questions from the audience, and not easy questions either, but his answers weren't very good. Let's listen to a little what Gavin Newsom had to say when it comes to affordability, especially when we're talking about our energy utilities.
You know the most important word in politics right now is affordability. Is it still too expensive for average Californians to make ends meet?
Well, that's why we created a brand new grade preschool for all, saving people $18,000. That's why we did the biggest expansion of any state in the United States history.
Wait, it saves who $18,000? It saves the parents of 4-year-olds. Unless they think the private school is better than the public school. But I'm a childless heathen. Where's my $18,000?
That's why we did the biggest expansion of any state in the United States history on child care subsidies. That's why we created a new product, not Trump RX. Should have called it Newsom RX. Again, you would have paid attention.
Boy, even though he's one of the most powerful people in the world because he's the governor of the 4th largest economy, like he likes to brag about, Gavin always acts like he has a chip on his shoulder. He is always pissed off about something. He's not a very joyful person.
It's called CalRx, $11 insulin, not to subsidize cost, to lower cost. That's why we're coming out with our own diapers, which is exciting.
We also spent a whole bunch of money on California Narcan, and it turns out the new forms of fentanyl are ineffective against, Narcan is ineffective against the new evolutions of fentanyl and carfentanil and trank.
Excited to make an announcement in that space. It's why we've not.
Are you willing to buy Gavin diapers? Okay, there's a drop that I really want to play, but no. I'm an adult. I am 40 years old. I am not going to play the Gavin drop that you thought I was going to play after mentioning California diapers. I'm not going to do it. I am a grown-up. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Excited to make an announcement in that space. It's why we've not doubled, we've almost tripled the earned income tax credits, over $1 billion, allow working families to keep more of their earnings. Why we had the largest tax rebate in U.S. history.
Yeah, it's still incredibly expensive to live here, especially if you're in the middle class and you didn't even qualify for that tax rebate. If you're rich, you can afford to live here. If you're poor, you get so many social services, you can somehow figure out a way to live here. Middle class, good luck.
At a state level, $18.1 billion, almost 18.3, depending on how you categorize it. But $18 billion tax rebate to address those costs.
By the way, that was what he's talking about was when the state had these $100 billion budget surpluses in 2021 and 2022, and we don't know where any of that money went. Because of a law called the GAN limit, because the state brought in so much money, they had to bring some of that money back to the taxpayers. That's the law. But don't you worry, Gavin wrote you a check in 2021. Do you even remember it?
But $18 billion.
And I didn't get that check. And I don't make that much money.
But $18 billion tax rebate to address those costs. That's why we have the most progressive rent controls of any state in America.
And rents here are higher than almost anywhere else.
That's why we're going hard on the supply-demand imbalance as it relates to housing. That's why we're starting to address these issues of time to delivery, some of the most progressive reforms on permitting in our state's history for large-scale projects deliver.
Yes, we've completely taken the cities out of it. Zoning no longer exists thanks to SB 79. Well, at least in the major counties where it passed.
On these large-scale projects, we didn't wait for the abundance book to come out on that.
By the way, he's talking about all these things that he's done. He's been governor for 8 years, and we have yet to see the results and the outcomes of any of this. He'll say he passed 50 CEQA reforms. Well, how come it's still so difficult and expensive to build here? And yes, there are some factors that are out of his control, like interest rates and the cost of goods, although Steve Hilton had a really good point yesterday. If we brought back the timber industry and started managing the forest, that would lower the cost of materials.
We advanced some of those projects years and years ago. Let me give you a proof point because it goes to the energy question. I'm in San Francisco. Since 1874, we've installed about 105 gigawatts of electricity in the state. 30.2 since I've been governor. And why do I highlight that? Because it needs to be highlighted. One of the largest installed battery and solar farms in the world, Darden in Fresno County, was just approved, 2,300 megawatts, under the new procurement reforms.
Yeah, and some of these battery plants are being approved in neighborhoods that don't want them because of the danger of fire and toxic gases. Ask what was going on in Monterey County or what they're planning in South Orange County.
Under these new regulatory reforms, I'm making
one of the reasons why, and this is something we're going to have to deal with, even though this is new emerging technology, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily green technology. Look, we all know about the components that are needed to manufacture batteries and EV batteries and, the batteries that charge your home when the solar panels are dark. But one of the things that made the devastation of the Palisades specifically so awful was all the toxic materials when these batteries catch fire in an inevitable, awful fire. I mean, you've seen these stories about how it takes firefighters 24 hours to put out an EV battery fire if an EV truck catches on fire. Like, we got to figure that out.
Under these new regulatory reforms, I'm
just saying, there's no fully clean green energy. Everything comes at some kind of cost.
Under these new regulatory reforms, I'm making the point that we haven't been sitting back on some of these structural issues. I inherited the most blessed and cursed state in America.
Yeah, but you were lieutenant governor. Well, that doesn't count. That's not a real job.
The day I got into office, the largest utility in the United States was bankrupt, PG&E.
And you orchestrated their bailout.
That's how I started. We had to dig out of that.
Let's not forget who Gavin had dinner at the French Laundry with. It was the lobbyist at PG&E.
And when you dig out of that, yes, that's been the biggest driver, interestingly, of utility costs when you look at the bill.
Well, that's for a few reasons. Yes, one of the drivers of cost in this state is massive electricity bills and massive rate hikes. How many rate hikes did PG&E have last year? 6? And the CPUC says yes to every single one of them.
And when you dig out of that, yes, that's been the biggest driver, interestingly, of utility costs when you look at the bill, where the costs related to decades and decades and decades of neglect to address the underlying issues around the hot's getting hotter, the dry's getting drier, climate, but also forest and vegetation management and undergrounding.
Or how about all the derelict maintenance on their own equipment like started the Camp Fire, which they were held criminally liable for at PG&E, and Gavin Newsom decided to bail them out and give them a safety certificate anyway.
All those things that we've 10x. We haven't played in the margin, $5.3 billion.
And by the way, the CPUC allows PG&E to pass on any cost of any maintenance or any undergrounding directly to the consumer. And the same thing's going on with SoCal Edison. They're talking about undergrounding in the Altadena fire zone. And apparently the CPUC has allowed SoCal Edison to send a bill to every homeowner that they have to dig under. And somehow it's the homeowner's responsibility. Yep, things are getting real affordable, Gavin. It's not all. Why is energy costs going up so dramatically? Some of it is the maintenance cost. And again, you could argue that maybe, just maybe, these for-profit monopolies shouldn't be getting so many profits in to make their shareholders happy, at the same time getting it off the backs of the poorest among us. Maybe you have that argument. But also one of the reasons that demand is so through the roof when it comes to energy consumption is because we're the home of AI, and these AI data farms that are making all these AI slop videos that are plaguing your social media feed are using so much power.
All those things that we've 10x. We haven't played in the margin, $5.3 billion in forest management. When I got here, it was about $200 million a year. Unprecedented investments in this space.
Yes, and what are the outcomes? Well, we've had some of the worst wildfires in the state's history under Gavin's watch.
Unprecedented.
Not the Camp Fire, that happened right before he got elected, but the rest of them, it's been some bad ones.
Unprecedented responsibility and accountability at PG&E. We tie executive compensation to performance on safety.
Where's the accountability for all the blackouts in San Francisco last month?
We also just passed on our Cap and Invest program, which we extended.
That's cap and trade, which was supposed to expire, but they extended it so they could pay for the high-speed rail.
We also just passed on our Cap and Invest program, which we extended to 2045 because we're not walking away from low-carbon green growth, a $60 billion, let me be fair, $56 billion rebate to address costs for utilities.
You know how, like, in April, you get a $70 credit on your check from PG&E or SoCal Edison or Delhi DWP or SMUD, what have you? That's what he's bragging about. 1 month, you're going to get $70 off. Yay.
After 11 years, this is the 11th, as lieutenant governor and governor, we finally got a deal with other Western states to regionalize our grid. This is one of the big news stories that's gotten some trade attention, but will have the impact of allowing us to export more of our green and clean energy, provide more reliability at a lower cost. We estimate $1 billion a year of savings through that for electricity. And we also just advanced our nation-leading energy efficiency programs under Title 24, $4.8 billion projected savings. So we're not sitting on that issue as well.
Yeah, but it's still so expensive. So he didn't really answer the question at all. He just bragged about a whole bunch of stuff that nobody understands.
2 quick follow-ups because I want to move on. You mentioned PG&E. Should the PG&E monopoly in California be broken up?
Oh, wow. Didn't expect that question. Bet there's a lot of San Franciscans that remember the blackout last month that would say yes. And in fact, fun fact, Did you know that San Francisco has been trying to get out of the thumb of PG&E for 100 years?
Well, PG&E is a very different company than it was prior to bankruptcy.
Fact check.
Well, I'm more satisfied under 1054. That was the framework and the rubric to which we created a statutory requirement, as exampled in my comments a moment ago around executive compensation being tied to safety. We also have the
Patty Poppy doesn't get a bonus if she burns down the state. That'll learn them.
To safety. We also have the clawback in that, which I will remind people, of a receivership, where the state can actually assert control statutorily in that law that I passed and we organized to take back control if they're not performing.
So you're saying no because the accountability does exist.
Yes, there is plenty of accountability for PG&E, including at Gavin Newsom's appointed members of the CPUC that approved 6 rate hikes last year, and they're going to approve even more.
Accountability is a persistent issue and continues to need to be improved. But I'm not convinced, and forgive me, I'm not, that a state that finally has turned and is turning DMV around wants to get in the utility business. Yeah.
Okay, one, that is at the same time a fair assessment and an indictment. Gavin doesn't want to take over PG&E because Gavin knows how bad the state is at running things, is a weird thing to say when you're the governor of the state. But the question wasn't about the state taking over PG&E. It was breaking up PG&E. And as much as we want to give flack to state-run agencies, there are plenty of locally run, municipally run utilities that perform better than crooked SoCal Edison and crooked PG&E and crooked SDG&E. LADWP is a bad example, but Burbank Water and Power is pretty good. Glendale Water and Power is pretty good. There are a lot of small municipal agencies that can handle water and power. So don't tell us that it is impossible to break up PG&E. I mean, the reason he would say that is those are his benefactors, and he has shown us that every single time. Look, I don't know what the answer is, but I do not like utility monopolies. I'm not a fan. I don't think they have your interest at heart. I think they obviously, because they are a company, they're a corporation, they have their shareholders at heart, they have their dividends at heart, and it is one of the only industries where, thanks to our regulations, they have a guaranteed rate of return. But has that made it so they are working aggressively to make their systems more resilient and safer? No. Look at SoCal Edison. Look what they just did. Look what they're now trying to get out of responsibility from. We've got one more hour to go, and I'm so excited about this. When we come back, we're going to talk to who I consider one of the most exciting young reporters in the city of Los Angeles, in the Southern California area. Matthew Seedorf from Fox 11 is going to join us because this guy seems to put himself almost in harm's way to bring the most exciting stories that we're seeing. So we're going to ask him about some of his most recent reports. How fun is that?